We popping the clutch, baby, as we back in from the break on a Monday, starting your work week, game week off correctly. 5 days. 5 days until Alabama football takes on Missouri, and you are locked and loaded on to the hottest show on the streets, the number one forum for Crimson Tide football news, that being in my own words, with yours truly, Stephen Smith of Touchdown Alabama Magazine. And we got some super chats here to shout out here. We got Kevin Compton, been on it, man. Kevin Compton, another $4.99 coming from him. We have the super chats here. Senator Hines, another member of that glorious Blue Wrench gang. Senator Hines dropping in that $4.99 to his credit. And Willie351, that smooth $7.77 from Willie351. So appreciating Kevin Compton, Willie351, and Senator Hines helping us out here in the super chats for TDA. But we look at Missouri. Alabama taking on Missouri this weekend, and the Tigers. There are a couple of things that Missouri does that Alabama offensively and defensively got to be aware of, got to keep its eye on here in this game coming up. And the two things that Alabama has to look at, Missouri's going to run a lot of that no-huddle, up-tempo, sort of fast-paced offense here, trying to run a lot of plays at one time. And so when you're going up against a no-huddle, up-tempo, fast-paced offense, you got to be able to move. You got to be able to make the checks, the corrections, the audibles, be able to get to the ball, get to the play. So in terms of Alabama's defense, first and foremost, this is going to be huge for Dylan Moses. This game will test how healthy is Dylan's knee. Dylan coming back from the knee injury he suffered last year in August camp. Will he be able to cut, move, bend, lateral quickness, agility? Will he be able to get around that field the way he needs to? So this no-huddle offense will test Dylan's stamina on that knee, but at the same time, it'll also test guys like Christian Harris, coming back for his second year as a sophomore. How much has he learned from going against up-tempo, no-huddle offenses as a freshman? Last year, Alabama took on South Carolina that had a lot of that up-tempo type style that it was tough to deal with at times for the Tide. So it went up against South Carolina that had it. Ole Miss had it a little bit. Of course, LSU and Auburn had it as well. So Alabama faced some teams in 2019 that carried a lot of that up-tempo, fast-pace, or fastball, as Nick Saban likes to call it, style of offense. So this game, it will test Dylan Moses. It will test Christian Harris. It will test, the defensive front. Can these guys be disciplined, hit their gaps, read their keys, play assignment football, not be fooled by the eye candy going around? And it will also test the defensive secondary for Alabama. Can they play their guys? Can they stay in the hip pocket of these receivers? Can they play the football while it's in the air? And for the defensive backs that will help out in run support, can they break down and make tackles in space? That was the big thing. That was the big bugaboo for Alabama last year, trying so hard to rip the football out and create those turnovers that the guys did not fundamentally break down in space to make the tackle. So the number one thing here Alabama's going to deal with is that no-huddle, fast-paced offense that Missouri's going to want to run. And led by its new head coach, the new head coach is brought in Elijah Drinkwitz. He goes by Eli Drinkwitz, but Elijah Drinkwitz, 37 years of age, young guy, pocketing that $4 million to coach Missouri. He comes over from Appalachian State. Now, Drinkwitz is a disciple of Gus Malzahn. He's a Gus Malzahn disciple here. Started off his career in 2006 to 2009 as a high school coach at Springdale High School in Arkansas. He was the quality control coach at Auburn from 2010 to 2011. Was a part of that 2010 team for the Tigers that won a national championship. 2012 and 2013, he was at Arkansas State as a running backs coach and co-offensive coordinator. He spent time at Boise State 2014, 2015. 2016 through 2018, he was at North Carolina State as an offensive coordinator and quarterbacks coach. And 2019, this past season, his first year as a college football head coach at Appalachian State in the Sun Belt. So he's an offensive mind. Very big offensive mind, but is a disciple of one Gus Malzahn. Now, he has created some big-time offenses during his tenure. At Boise State, 2015, he had guys like Brett Ripon at quarterback, 3,000-yard guy, Jeremy McNichols at running back, a 1,000-yard back, a 1,300-yard back to be specific. Thomas Spurbeck at wide receiver was a 1,400-yard guy, 1,412 yards receiving and 8 touchdowns. During his 3 years at North Carolina State, he had a quarterback in Ryan Finley, good running backs in Matthew Days and Naheem Hines, and also Reggie Gillespie. At wide receiver, there's Kelvin Harmon and Jacoby Myers. And then at Appalachian State, he had talent as well on that team. That was a group that went 12-1 and went to the Sun Bowl Conference Championship and won that. So Elijah Drinkwitz, he's coached talent. He's been around talent. He's coached talent. He's developed talent. He's had big-time players, whether it's been at quarterback, running back, and wide receiver. So now he's here at Missouri, and while the Tigers have not named a starting quarterback, they've got 2 guys they're trying to pick from. They do have a really good running back in Larry Roundtree. Roundtree was a 1,000-yard back in 2018. Last season, 829 yards rushing with 9 touchdowns. He's kind of built low to the ground like Kylan Hill of Mississippi State and Clyde Edwards-Helaire of LSU. Alabama had issues with Helaire last season, so with Roundtree, you got to break down. You got to make those tackles wrap up in space, prevent him from getting those big yards there after contact. But aside from the no-huddle offense that Missouri runs, that Bama's got to be aware of. Missouri's got experience on defense. Got a lot of leaders on defense that will test this Alabama front, especially the offensive line. When you look at, they've got Nick Bolton, who's the returning linebacker. He had 107 tackles a season ago. He's back as a junior. They got a great defensive line headed by Jordan Elliott, who had 8.5 tackles for loss last year to lead the team, and also Kobe Whiteside, who had 6.5 sacks to lead the team. In the secondary, therein lies Joshua Bledsoe, who had 10 pass breakups. So Missouri's got some guys returning on defense that will look to challenge the Alabama offensive front. And, of course, they got a guy in the secondary there in Bledsoe that will look to go man up with some of these wide receivers for the Crimson Tide. Now, I know earlier in the offseason, there was a report that Missouri had 12 guys that tested positive for COVID. Now, I know since then there have been some retesting going on. So will those same 12 guys that tested positive be held out of this week's game? Have they gotten better? Have they gotten healthy? That remains to be seen. But Coach Saban showing a lot of respect to the defensive side of the ball for Missouri, just seeing how they've got 8 players returning as veterans, returning as starters. So the up-tempo, the high pace, the no-huddle offense, something that Alabama has got to keep an eye on, has got to look for. Missouri's going to look to take some shots downfield. They're going to want to run the football. They're going to want to establish Larry Roundtree. So in this game, Alabama's defensive front with Justin Boygby, with DJ Dale, with LeBron Ray, and guys rotating in behind those guys, they've got to stop the run. Even with Will Anderson there occupying the outside, got to stop the run, got to play gap football, assignment football, fundamental football, not allowing those yards there after contact where Roundtree is concerned. And then, of course, being able to get pressure on the quarterback, whomever Missouri has lining up there under center. They got 2 guys they're competing for the job, including, a guy that's a dual threat quarterback. So, those 2 aspects, and then whomever the Tigers have at wide receiver, this Alabama secondary, trusting your instincts, play the ball, play the receiver, understanding the technique that Coach Saban has taught this group, and trusting that technique. And that goes to Patrick Surtain, Josh Jobe, Malachi Moore, and, of course, Jordan Battle, and also Daniel Wright. So that's just a no-huddle offense for Alabama's offensive front, which, according to the depth chart that was provided, Alex Leatherwood, Deontay Brown, Landon Dickerson, Emil Ekiyor Jr., and Evan Neal are the starters there from left to right, and that group neutralizing this pass rush because Kobe Whiteside and Jordan Elliott, these guys are going to want to get to Mac Jones. They're going to want to get to Mac Jones, rough him up, put him on the ground. They're going to want to stuff the run game of Najee Harris, get that penetration inside this Alabama offensive line, and create some havoc, especially with the Tigers at home. And Columbia, Missouri can be at times a very tough place to play it. So for this Alabama offensive line under Coach Kyle Flood, getting a hat on a hat, driving these guys off the football, imposing your will as a potential Joe Moore award-winning offensive line early, getting this run game going with Najee Harris, Brian Robinson, Trey Sanders, and the rest of the crew, and getting Mac Jones in the situations where he can attack this defensive secondary, because aside from Joshua Bledsoe, there's not much there in that Missouri secondary. So you've got Jalen Waddle, you've got Devontae Smith, you've got John Mechie, you've got other guys that will be rotated in. So being able to attack that group is going to be huge there for the Crimson Tide. But we take another break here on this show, just talking about some things that Missouri will bring to the table that Alabama has got to keep its eye on. But upon our return, we get back to you guys. We get back to the phone lines, taking your phone calls, your thoughts, your tweets, your chats, your questions, and it's coming right after this.
T-Town Menswear in the University Mall in Tuscaloosa. Touchdown Alabama Magazine is Alabama football's premier publication. A subscription to Touchdown Alabama Magazine is the perfect gift for any Alabama fan. For exclusive news and information, recruiting updates, a free annual print magazine, and more, go to touchdownalabama.com and click join. Only $5.95 per month, or pay $49.95 for a full year subscription. That's a saving of almost $22. Go to touchdownalabama.com today and roll Tide.
Thank you for watching Touchdown Alabama Magazine's YouTube channel. To continue to get the best in Alabama football content, subscribe here and turn on your notifications to stay connected with the hottest shows covering your Crimson Tide.